Hey, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to another episode of Pirkei Avos with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. I know this isn't our usual day, but I'm in the middle of transition, so I may be canceling out my daytime broadcast during weekdays. And so, we're working with Rabbi Chaim. It's always a joy to have a learned rabbi share with us of the 70 nations. And so it's valuable. I don't want to miss one episode if I ever have an opportunity to broadcast. I'm going to have a lot of on my plate in the next 4 or 5 months, but I'm still looking for a solid time to work with Rabbi Coffman to keep sharing Torah, because it is so essential in this day and age that the light shines out of Israel, and it means so much to me to spend the time with Rabbi Coffman sharing with us the ethics of the Father. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. Rabbi Coffman, how you doing today? And thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Doing great. Recovering. I think we finally recovered from Purim. So, here's always exciting, especially to see Jerusalem totally underwater. So it was quite a lot of fun seeing a lot of the festivities and a lot of festivities in my own house. So that was quite enjoyable. And now we're on the path to Passover, right? That's next holiday coming up. It's a scary thing. 28 days, 29 days. Got to get that house clean, right? So we're holding by the 8th Mishnah, and going to be actually interesting about, we'll see how much it applies, because it really applies to judges, right? But we're going to see how it applies to us as well. Says Yehuda ben Tabai, Shimon ben Shetach, right? Remember, each person receives it from a group, right? There are two. They receive it from two, right? They received the tradition from them. Yehuda ben Tabai says, serving as a judge, don't act as a lawyer. When the litigants stand before you, consider them both as guilty. But when they are dismissed from you, consider them both as innocent, provided they have accepted the judgment. Now, seemingly there's a contradiction, right? In other words, if you say, when the litigants stand before you as a judge, you look them as being guilty, right? In other words, you can't show favoritism, right? We'll certainly explain that. That should be obvious, because if you show favoritism, that means the law is not going to get judged properly, because obviously there's a payoff. There's some sort of payoff. And when the Torah says you're not allowed to take a bribe, who's it talking about? It's talking about a rabbinic court judge, right? Not talking about just anybody. Now, to be a rabbinic court judge, obviously you have to be on a high spiritual level. There's a lot of knowledge. That you have to have. So it is kind of ironic that the Torah says who you're worried about is going to take a bribe, right? It's none other than a judge, right? But obviously, God understood the nature of man. And even though the more a person knows, the greater they are spiritually, the greater the evil inclination, right? So you're going to say, wow, really? You think someone's been learning Torah for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, someone at a very high spiritual level can be bribed? They can be bribed. There are rabbinical courts you cannot trust. Orthodox rabbinical courts that you cannot trust 100% because they're corrupt. There are some known to be corrupt. Now, it's not fair, right? Now, what happens if, God forbid, someone takes you to rabbinical court and you know that rabbinical court is corrupt, right? Normally the law, just as a side point, the law is that if you sue somebody, they have a right to choose the court. Right? Now, what if you know the court is corrupt? Are you allowed to go to another court? Well, if you know the court is corrupt, then you're not going to want to go there, right? If you go to another court and say, I'm not going to this court because of X, Y, and Z, okay, there are different ways around it, but the system, a person can get messed up, right? And I always tell people, in general, I used to sit in a rabbinical court by Rebbe for 5 years, once a week. So at least I learned how to curse in Yiddish. That had to be worth something, right? But in the end, people would ask me advice, different things that whatever they were going through, whatever, and I would tell them, if you don't have to go to the rabbinical court, certainly better not to, right? Two Jews, there's a disagreement. You have to go to rabbinical court. Even if you know the other side isn't willing to go, you have to summon them. And if they don't come the first time, you summon them again. If they don't come a second time, then you summon them again. A third time, they don't come, the rabbinical court will hear your claim. And if you have a valid claim, then the rabbinical court will give you permission to go to a secular court. Now, going to a secular court is a Torah prohibition in general.
Really?
In other words, if you circumvent the rabbinic court, two Jews, we're not talking about non-Jews, two Jews, if they decide they're not going to a rabbinical court, they go to a secular court, right? It's a Torah prohibition. It's a pretty severe thing. What would happen just in general, let's say according to Torah law, right? According to Jewish law, a person would be exempt or a person would get off. According to secular law, he's liable. Right? It's a perversion of justice. Total perversion of justice. I remember, a number of times sitting in the rabbinical court and one person's yelling and screaming, "Hey, he took me to secular court." And the basin went bananas because, it's a very severe prohibition. You're allowed to go to a secular court if you have permission from the rabbinical court, but not before. But my Rebbe asked the question, okay, if you have to go to if you have to go to secular court, it's not a good thing. So if it's not a good thing, then why are you going to tell me that the rabbinical court's going to send me there? Right? The simple answer is because if you wouldn't be allowed to go to secular court, then people could damage other people. They could steal and do all kinds of things. In the end, they're never going to be held liable. Right? But it's certainly not at the outset. That's not what you want to do. Right? But if you have no choice, right? If you absolutely have no choice, then that's it. Then you have to go. You have to go to the rabbinical court. Now there are times a person will go to rabbinical court. Now rabbinical court, they don't judge according to Torah law. There is no such thing according to Torah law because we don't have those same type of rabbis, right? In other words, when someone got rabbinic ordination, right, what we call smicha in the law in the vernacular, right? Smicha just means you place the hands, right, on the animal, right? That's what it means. In any case, rabbinic ordination back then meant a whole different thing. Right here today, people get rabbinic ordination in only specific things. Let's say the laws of Shabbos, let's say the laws of Kashrut, let's say the laws of family purity laws, whatever. So people think, oh, he's an expert in this, he's an expert in everything. Well, it's not necessarily true, right? What does a rabbi mean? He's a teacher, right? So we spoke about credentials, right? We spoke about that, a number of times. So you can have people that are frauds even if they know certain things or they have certain knowledge. Right, regardless of that, to be a rabbinic court judge, right, there's a lot you have to know, right? There are 3-4 tractates of Talmud you have to know backwards and forwards, right? The laws of damage is very complex, right, extremely complex. So my Rebbe points out that if you take the requisite, exams and you pass the exams, what are some people going to think? They'll say, okay, appoint him to rabbinical court. Right, let him be a judge. He passed, he passed his exam. Right, if he passed an exam, very good. But Rebbe said no, that's not enough. Right, he has to have fear of heaven. He has to be decided by rabbinic court judges. Just because I have a degree, right? We'll speak about a secular degree for a second. Right, everyone knows what a BA or a BS is. An MA is more of it, and a PhD is piled higher and deeper. Right. So people give respect, unbelievable respect to a PhD. Now, you have to understand, PhD is like a 100-page paper, and you have to take oral exams. Now, when I went to university, so what did I major in? I majored in history. What are you going to do with history? Nothing. But what are you going to be, a professor? You'll teach, whatever. Right? But imagine, my specialty was World War II. So imagine if I did a PhD, and I don't have a master's or a PhD, I have an undergraduate degree. Now imagine if I would do a PhD on the Third Reich, right? The socioeconomic rise of the Third Reich between 1933 and 1940. Now, if I did that, does that make me an expert in all things in World War II? No. It makes me an expert in one aspect of one subject of that whole thing. But people give that so much respect. People say, oh, you're just jealous. It's one aspect of one thing. And people give it like so unbelievable respect. But I digress. Point is that even if you have that type of knowledge, and you have that specific knowledge, right? A person who's going to be a judge, a rabbinic court judge, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond book knowledge, right? Obviously, you have to have a rebbe. Obviously, you have to have proper derech eretz. You have to have proper, how you speak to others, how you deal with others. If a person's character traits are bad, but they have all this knowledge, then they're nothing, right? Because we're going to see derech, ein kemach ein Torah. What's kemach means flour, right? But it means if you don't have money, right? That's what it really means. Ein Torah, but also, right? Derech eretz kidmul Torah, right? Ethics came before Torah. What does that mean? It means if you learned a lot of Torah. One of my rabbis once told me, learned under somebody, and the person was brilliant, an unbelievable Talmudic scholar, right? There was only one problem. He said his character traits were so bad that as brilliant as he was, he said he couldn't learn under him, right? So the knowledge isn't enough, right? You need to be what they call a bench. You have to be someone who's got good character traits, interacts well with others, etc. So if you ever been a court judge, what would I think, right? I would think the person's Teflon, can't be touched. Look at all the knowledge, right? But you see from here that he could be bribed. That if he doesn't look at both of them in the same vein, how can he judge? Right? So says the Mishnah over here. The Mishnah says don't act as a lawyer. Right? It means, that's interesting, it means a judge shouldn't organize the arguments for the litigants. In other words, he shouldn't give them added information. So they shouldn't reveal anything to them. Because now that would seem obvious. Because if he's giving them a helping hand, then the other person's at a disadvantage. Right? They're totally disadvantaged. So therefore, if he tells them, okay, if you say this, or you say that, and you use this argument, then you're going to win the case. Right? So therefore, it means, don't be a lawyer, do not set up the information. Don't give him answers to what he's going to say. Right? The only way a rabbinic court judge is allowed to help someone, and that is if they're a widow. Right? If they're a widow or an orphan. That they can help because they have an obligation to defend them. Right? So let's say their argument is weak or whatever, they can help defend them, against, some predator or whatever, against them. Because obviously God, the Torah says, God defends the widow. God defends, the orphan. But if they have difficulty or whatever, the basin can step in. Right? But for anybody else, they're not allowed to because obviously they're showing a bias. Right? Now that's one aspect. Could also mean person shouldn't think they're so great in learning. Now this is actually another thing. Person shouldn't think they're so great in learning that they're going to speak before the rabbi speaks to answer a question. Right? Now, if it's something that's obvious, or it's something, everybody knows, and his rabbi gives them permission. In other words, if it's something obvious, his rabbi doesn't have to give him permission. Right? If you were to ask me about the mitzvah to get drunk on Purim, right? And what the halacha is, and I know it, so I don't have to ask my Rebbe. Right? I can give that over. If it's something more complex and I'm not sure, whatever, it's one thing. Right? But in general, a person's rabbi is not, in this day and age, not really going to care. Right? Unless he goes beyond. That was one of the sins the Talmud brings out that Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron and Cohen, were killed for. One of them was the fact that they gave over the halacha in front of their Rebbe, in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, it could be Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't have cared. Right? But in the end, it was an affront to his honor. Now, you have to understand, these were two almost of the greatest individuals in the history of man, Nadav and Avihu. There are a number of reasons, potentially, why they died. Right? But one of them is that they gave over Jewish law in front of their Rebbe, which was seen as disrespect. Now, people are gonna say, come on, like what's the big deal? He's a rabbi, right? Okay, there's a difference, right? Someone, there are a lot of people gonna have the title, right? And let's say they earn the title. Let's say they know what they're doing in different things. Fine, right? But obviously, compared to their Rebbe, what are they compared? Most students do not compare, to their mentors, to their rabbis. Sometimes they surpass them. That's true. Most times, not even close. Right? So, my Rebbe is one of the top 5 rabbinical authorities in the world. I'm compared to him like an ant, like not even a toenail, not even a fungus in between, etc. So, something like that, you have to show proper respect. So when it says don't act as a lawyer, don't be conceited. Don't think, oh, I know the answer to this. I remember once, I asked my Rebbe a question, so he said, whatever, it wasn't so straightforward. And he said, okay, well, what do you think? And I started to answer. He goes, think! I didn't tell you to give me an answer. It's not black and white. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just we have a question online since we're talking about things like that. Cole, a friend of mine down in Seattle area, is asking, will a rabbinical court hear a case from a Noahide if he had an issue with a Jew?
There are rabbinical courts that will. I don't know if every rabbinical court would. I don't see why not. If a Jew let's say a Jew takes a Noahide to court, let's say, and a Noahide agrees. Noahide says, yeah, I'm willing to go to the rabbinical court. The rabbinical court will hear the case.
But the other 100%. Way around?
If a Noahide takes a Jew to a rabbinical court?
Is it possible?
It's possible. Definitely possible.
It must have happened throughout history way back
when. You have non-Jews going in front of a rabbinical court for the sake of conversion. Right? Okay, so that's not the same. There are rabbinical courts that a person can go in front of to declare that they themselves are a Noahide. Now, today, there's no such thing, really, right? There's no such thing as a ger toshav today, right? We call a non-Jew lives amongst the Jews or whatever, because you need Yovel, you need the sabbatical year, right? You need Shemitah, you need Yovel, even though there is the sabbatical year in Israel. Doesn't matter, we don't have that same type of power today, so it's not done. But there are people that will go in front of a rabbinical court, to take on being a Noahide. Now, most people in the process of conversion, right, even if they're in the process of conversion, what I call a Jew in training, they're a Noahide de facto. Right? So I get this question often. They say, do I have to go to a rabbinical court? So I say, no, there's no obligation. So the question is, should I go? There's no Indian. Right? Today, there's no, you want to go, you can go. Does it change anything if you do it or not? If you sit in your house and you say, I am a Noahide, okay, makes it a little more official. Certainly doing it in front of a rabbinical court. But at the end of the day, since we have no sabbatical year, right, and we have no Jubilee year, right, and there is no ger toshav today, so, I would say it doesn't really make sense to do it. But there are people that will say, I want to do it, I want to make it formal, okay. Right, not saying not. So if a Noahide would take a Jew to a rabbinical court, right? So, and the Jew is willing to go, the Beis Din will hear the case. Beis Din will definitely hear the case.
Well, there you go, Cole. I think he answered it straightforward. Thanks so much, Rabbi.
So something like this, where now again, like as my Rebbe said, you got to think. You can't just answer, right? If the answer is clear cut, you don't necessarily have to look up anything. It's one thing. If the answer is a little more, what they'll say in England, a little bit dodgy, let's say, okay, so, that's something else, right? But a person, has to know their place. We're going to see that in Pirkei Avos also, right? That the rabbis tell us you have to know what your place is. And there are a lot of people out there think they know a lot more than they do. They answer a lot more, and they don't have a clue, right? They think they're holding somewhere, where they're not. And that shows more than anything else, that they're conceited, right? In the ways of the righteous at the very beginning, talks about being conceited. He said that is the root of all bad character traits. Any bad character trait, that is the source. So the people say, oh, he's a rabbi, he's a rabbi. No, there are differences. Some people are called rabbi and they're not a rabbi. They're bogus, right? It doesn't matter. Even if they have rabbinic ordination. It doesn't matter. They say things that are wrong. They do things that are wrong. So who cares, right? Rabbi is just a title, right? It can be a false title for a lot of people, right? There are plenty of quote unquote, rabbis out there believe in same-sex marriage. They believe in all kinds of things that are antithetical to Torah. So, title doesn't really mean that much. So, but a person has to know their place, right? So if you act in that way, and you say, oh, I know, and I'm going to answer in front of my Rebbe, that makes you look conceited. There was a question once someone asked, after my Rebbe gave class about a woman who had converted and she didn't know she had to cover her hair. She's married. Now, so someone asked him, if she didn't wear, does that nullify the conversion? Right? Because someone comes in front of a rabbinical court and says, I'm going to keep everything except I'm going to eat shrimp. Or this woman says, I'm not going to cover my hair. Not that she didn't know about it. That's forbidden. Right? You're not allowed to get, to convert for the sake of marriage, for any ulterior motive. If they say one thing they're not going to do, it's no good. So this woman didn't know she had to cover her hair. So I was chomping at the bit, and I was like dying to answer, but he didn't ask me. My Rebbe was right there. So, he said, not every non-Jew is supposed to know everything. So therefore, it's not considered a rebellion. If she would have said, I wouldn't have done it anyway, even if I had known about it, okay. That's something else. So I told him tongue-in-cheek afterwards, I said, listen, if she would have been in my classes, it would have been something she would have known. He's like, yeah, no. So I said it again. I said, if she would have been in my class, he goes, all right, I got the point. But not everyone is supposed to know everything. Right? But that being the case, if I would have answered straight away, and I would have jumped up, that would have been disrespect. First of all, I wasn't asked the question. Right? But if I would have done that, because I got over eager and I said, oh, let me answer this, and he was right there, that would have been a sign of disrespect. Now, he could have said, it doesn't matter. Right? You could answer. He'll tell people I work with converts, right? It's not a secret. So, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe he wouldn't have cared. Maybe it wouldn't have been a slight to his character, but it's disrespectful. Right? It's disrespectful even if you knew the right answer. So that's one thing. And there are people, fortunately I know some of them, that have this flaw. And they have this flaw that they think they know. And they have the ability because, they got this title. So my opinion is just as valid, as so-and-so, but they're a billion times greater than you. If they're a billion times greater than you, you can't open up your mouth. It's like arguing with someone with a PhD in that subject. I know better because I saw it on Wikipedia. I got to prove, right? Imagine someone comes, finds a great article, Wikipedia on physics. They say, Stephen Hawking, you're done. I'm going to fry you. Are you joking? You're going to come with an article from Wikipedia. You're going to throw them off. And this is like one of the top physicists ever. And you're going to knock them off. I don't think so. Right? And, again, a person has to know where they're holding, what their stature is in reality, in real time, and who someone else is. If they're a peer, it's one thing. If this person's 10 times greater, you don't open your mouth even if you think you're right. Unless they say something that's like absolute heresy. But if you say, well, his opinion is this, my opinion is this, you got a problem.
Out of bounds, yeah.
Yeah, you have an ego problem. So that's one explanation. Now another explanation is, don't be like those judges that force someone to come in front of them. In other words, if someone decides to go in front of a rabbinical court, you go after the litigant, right? Let's say you have Reuven and Shimon. Reuven says Shimon owes him money. Shimon says he doesn't. Who do we go after? We go after Shimon, whichever rabbinical court he wants to go to, right? Obviously within reason. That's where you go. He's got the say because he's the one being accused. Right? So if that's the case, Levi can't say, Rabbi Levi can't say, you come to me. Everything comes in front of me. Why does Levi have to go in front of him? Levi can go wherever he wants. Doesn't matter. His city, another city. Right? He doesn't have to go after him. But if you have someone who tells you, right, that they want to force someone to come to them, right, it's also forbidden. Also, we're not talking about a judge over here. We're not saying that this judge is going to give this person false accusations, right? Maybe he's being paid, right? Maybe he's being paid by the other side. So what does he do? So he gives the other side wrong information. He says, yeah, maybe you should say this. Maybe you should say that. But really he's being paid by the other side to mess him up, right? That you're not allowed to do, right? That would be obvious because he's lying. Forget about taking a bribe. He's lying, right? What does the Torah say? Midvar sheker tirchak. You're not allowed to lie, right? There are certain things you're allowed to tell what we call a white lie, right? That maybe there are a few certain things, right? But in general, you're not allowed to lie. Period. Even to help the person with their accusations, unless it's a widow, right? As we mentioned, that's forbidden because they're showing favoritism. And if they're showing favoritism, that means the judgment is not going to be judged the way it needs to. Another explanation is that God sits with the judges themselves. In other words, when a person judges, right? A person judges, they have to have absolute fear of God, right? And it's as if God himself is there to help them clarify the law. Now, I mentioned before, I forgot to actually clarify. I'm always good at asking questions and forgetting to answer. I remember once I spoke in San Jose, at a third meal on Shabbos, and I had like 10 minutes to speak or whatever. So I asked the question. Then I went on to my third subject, and then I finished, and I was like, oh my, I forgot to answer the question. So 3 people came up to me, and I knew what was going to happen. They're like, but what's the answer? I was like, oops. So the question was,
Energize your bunny. Yeah.
So yeah, right. The question was, someone says, I want true judgment. I want Torah judgment. But what's the problem? I was saying before, we don't have real rabbinic ordination today, right? That because we don't have a tradition. That tradition was already lost a long time ago after the destruction of the temple of getting rabbinic ordination, one from another till you get back to the temple, right? Till you get to the Sanhedrin. We don't have that anymore. So basically the litigants are going to agree these rabbis have the authority. They're going to give them the authority because they're going to sign a document giving them whatever they say goes. Now, it's not so simple because people sometimes don't uphold it, which is bad, right? But whatever the case is, they agree to take on what the rabbinical court says. But the rabbinical court does not have the ability to judge according to Torah judgment because there are certain things they can't do, certain things they can't judge, right? One of the things that is forbidden is, let's say what we call a kanas, a fine. Right? If someone did something, they were supposed to be given a fine. That was something that you needed proper rabbinic smicha to do. Right? Rabbinic ordination. We don't have it today. So that can't be judged. If the judges there see this is where it's going, they'll throw it out. They won't judge that aspect of it because they can't. Right? They're not allowed to. There are other times where let's say in order to nab someone, you need 2 witnesses, right? The Torah book of Deuteronomy says you need 2 witnesses to establish something. So he says what if you have 1 witness? What if you only have 1 witness? So what do? You get the other side to swear, right? They're supposed to swear, but what are we afraid of today? We're afraid of that the person doesn't have proper fear of heaven, and if he swears, it's going to be swear falsely. You're going to take God's name in vain. No rabbinical court will do that. Now the problem is, so what do? This guy only has 1 witness, right? He's got 1 witness, but this witness swears, not a false witness, right? For argument's sake, he's a true witness. He's got 1 witness. We're going to speak about this. He's got 1 witness. You're supposed to make the other guy swear now. But you can't. We're afraid he's going to lie. So So what do they have to do? They have to make what we call a pshara. Pshara is a compromise. That's the only thing that the rabbinical court is allowed to do. What they're allowed to do is what we call pshara karav ladin. Pshara karav ladin means they're going to make a compromise according to the law. Right? The way they see it, and again, they're signing a document. They're signing a document basically saying whatever the rabbis tell them, that's what they're obligated to do. Right? So I remember there were some Sephardic people who came in and said, we want Torah law. So my Rebbe laughed, that's great. You're not going to get it here or anywhere else. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Right? So in this case, right, the judge, if he would help someone else's, or one of the side's accusations, forbidden. Right? Obviously, because, there is favoritism. Now, you might tell me, ethics of our fathers, right, is all about the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. It's all about ethics. This is talking about a rabbinic court judge, right? Everyone should be jumping up and down saying, what in the world are you telling me? This person has world-class knowledge, right? He's spent years and years studying. These are the hardest laws to learn. They're very, very complex, right? I remember I was thinking years ago of being a rabbinic court judge, but there was a place I could have learned for 10 years. In other words, you can't learn anything else, and it's like you sell your soul, right? That's the only thing you learn for 10 years. It's very intense. I wasn't willing to do it. I mean, listen, I could have sat and learned for that amount of time or longer, but I wasn't willing to to spend my time just doing that. So even with all that knowledge, in everything that they know, the Mishnah is telling you cannot trust. In other words, we're not looking at them as scoundrels, God forbid. But the Torah speaks Belashon B'nei Adam, in the language of man. So when the Torah says, as we mentioned before, that you're not allowed to take bribes, taking bribes is even at the highest level. Because the greater the Talmud Chacham, the greater the rabbi, the greater the rabbinic scholar, his evil inclination is that much greater. But you think about, I think about my Rebbe, what's his evil inclination? I can't even imagine. He's going to eat another chocolate bar. What is his evil inclination? Can't imagine. I'm not going to tell you what my evil inclinations are. Right, but it's not the CFL. I can promise you that. But I had to get that in. But the evil inclination, for someone that great, and there have been great people that have fallen. They have fallen because they just got caught up in other things. Yeah, and whatever bribes, it's all kinds of things. There was a story many years ago. I'll just tell one story. There was a story of a great rabbi that they got caught for fraud, money laundering. They got caught money laundering, money going through the yeshiva, but it was money laundering, and there was jail time and everything else. And I made a comment. Saying at least the person admitted he was wrong. Now I didn't say what he did was right, And there was a certain blog that totally blasted me and fried me and said, "You agree?" And I didn't say I agreed. Yeah, I said I was happy he admitted what he did was wrong, because everybody justifies and they say I had permission from this. I could tell you from this. Okay, there are people like that once they have their hand in the cookie jar, they're still telling you why it's permissible. With rabbinic law, it's even better. Right? It can get even more skewed. Crazy things. So finally I got hammered. And they said, and I kept saying, I didn't say what he did was right. I just said, I was glad he admitted he was wrong. So finally, what did they say? They say, I want you to tell everybody. They boxed me in a corner and say, why did he do this? So I wrote this whole long thing. And I said, you're really not going to like my answer. And my answer was, I don't have to answer for him. He's going to answer for himself. And I never answer those type of questions. Someone asked me, I saw 2 Orthodox Jews in a casino. Well, don't you hold going to a casino is forbidden? I said, yes. They said, what were they doing there? I said, probably gambling, having a good time. They said, but it's forbidden. I said, you're right. And there are people that are overweight, and there are people that smoke, and there are people doing all kinds of things that are wrong. I don't have to answer for that. I don't have to justify what they do. God forbid I have to justify what I do. After 120 years, it's going to be hard enough. Someone's addicted, to bogus football. I'm not going to justify that. Come on. Get away. Right? So
3 downs.
3 downs. That's it. When you talk about things like that, and you say justification, it's not for anyone to justify. The person who did it has to justify himself. This person could have been a great rabbi, whatever, and he succumbed because he wanted to pay taxes. Right? It would have been a lot of money in taxes. Okay? I mean, it's not an excuse. He got caught. According to everybody, is it forbidden? It's forbidden. I have to answer why I did it. I could come up with 100 reasons. What's the difference? It has nothing to do with me. I only said, let's make clear, I'm glad he admitted he was wrong. How people twisted that and said, oh, you're saying he's right. I never said it. Right? So over here, the greater the inclination, evil inclination, he can show favoritism. Person can do him favors. He's got a great house by a nice river, whatever. He wants to go fishing. So he can use this guy. Great. He'll let him use it whenever he wants. People have biases. Even if someone did them a favor, a small favor, the rabbinical court judges will not judge the case if they're there. Because they have a bias. They did them a favor. And they maybe they'll look at certain things in their favor because of that. And they're blinded. It can happen. So you need someone with very broad shoulders to know. It's like, if they can look at it straight down the middle and they're not going to look either way, good. So we mentioned before, God sits with them and the judgment has to be good. If it's not, the punishment, if they pervert justice, can't imagine. You cannot imagine. The Tana over here warns us that even if this judge wants to help from a logistical perspective, not allowed to do it because God is watching. Right? God is helping over here. So it looks totally skewed. And unfortunately, this can happen. And imagine God sitting there watching. And he's saying, look at these great people perverting justice. Giving what Reuven, what Shimon owes Reuven, but it's really not according to the law. It's really wrong. It's a perversion of justice. It's not allowed. But it happens. And it can happen. I'm not saying across the board, how common it is. I'm not going to bring out statistics. I have no idea. Right? But are there people that are, not on the up and up 100%? But if you look at it as God is there, how could they do that? How in the world? I mean, I've seen things with my own eyes, and heard things that, how could a person do this? Because they don't have any fear of heaven. There's no one watching over them. They do whatever they think is right, even if it's extortion. Right? How can extortion be permitted? It's not. It happened to me. So I told this quote-unquote rabbi, this is extortion. They said, doesn't matter. This is what we're doing, and that's it. I said, but it's extortion. You admit it's extortion. Yeah, so what? No integrity. None. Also, the judges have to look at both litigants equally, neither one having an advantage. Right? Now, in everyday lives, we can say, okay, this only applies to judges. What about us? So therefore, we have to look in our own ways and what we do. And what do? We're no better. Because what we do is we justify what we do. We're just as crooked. Right? But we'll say, a person will say, I had a right to speak Lashon Hara against this person. Right? Now, there are certain criteria. Right? There are certain criteria. If the criteria is met, you had a right to say it, okay. If the criteria is not met, even if it's true, right? That's why it doesn't apply to a non-Jew, right? If it's true, you're not allowed to repeat it for no reason. If you're warning people against some people that are corrupt or whatever, it's one thing. But if you're just doing it to vent, right? It's forbidden, right? You're not allowed to. So we do the same thing because we try and justify what we do and we push everybody else off. So you're going to say, this doesn't just apply to judges, right? This also applies to us. Now, what is it? Now, we said in the Mishnah, right, the litigants have to stand before you, consider them both as guilty. Right? Now, what does it mean you see them as being evil, right, as guilty? Again, judge is never going to look at somebody, or should, right, having favor. Maybe he's an important person in the community. Maybe he's got money. Maybe he's got power. Maybe he's got influence. So if a person looks at them like that, now let's say the person's poor. Right? Let's say the person's poor and he's got other things against him. Maybe a judge will say, I want to defend him. He's had it rough. Right? Maybe I should show more favor to him. Because, different things. Sickness in his family and his wife died and this happened and, his kids are crazy and all that. Maybe I should have more compassion for him. It doesn't go just because he's rich and he's powerful, whatever. Person can feel bad. But it doesn't matter. If he's guilty, he's guilty. Right? Regardless of whether he's powerful or whether he's poor. Right? You got to look at them. You have to look at them both as both being guilty. Because you have to assume you have two people there. Right? You have two people there. Somebody is lying. Right? In other words, they're going to tell their story. They'll bring witnesses. They'll say, no, it wasn't like this. It was like this. It wasn't like this. It wasn't like this. But somebody is skewing the facts. I sat in the rabbinical court for a while, and I saw certain things that, give one example. Someone was building out, I guess, on their porch. And when they were building out on their porch, they could see straight into someone's living room. Right? So what did this guy say? He gave me permission. He signed on my plans. Right? So one of the rabbis got up and he said, if I was building and I could see straight into your living room, so you would let me build? He said, well, he did. He said, the other guy did. So the other guy says, yeah, I only did that when your plans were up to this point. The fact that you went beyond that, I didn't sign on that. I wouldn't let you look straight in my living room or take away light, right? Let's say someone builds a porch, takes away your light, right? You're allowed to stop them. They take away your view. You're allowed to stop them, right? So it's causing damage, right? Certainly if they can see in your living room, they don't even need binoculars. They can see straight in. Oh, but he let me do it. They made him take it down, right? Okay. But he signed on it. Yeah, but he's not telling the truth. You only signed on one part, or he didn't sign on the other part.
Right.
Change plans.
Truth, whole life.
Yeah, in my language, that's Joey Suzu. He's lying, right? So you got to look at somebody is lying. Now you have to be. Now obviously the rabbinic court judges, they're not stupid. So, the litigants may think they are, like they have their heads in the books or whatever, but they know what goes on in the world. Right? So they have to assume, they have to assume somebody is not telling the truth. Yeah, question.
I just wanted to ask, while we're on this deep topic around the big ethic as far as judging, I know in my country here in Canada, we're very, very strong on the notion of a miscarriage of justice. And we do everything humanly possible to avoid it, even though there are more corrupt spots in different areas. But how do rabbinical courts view the potential for miscarriage of justice?
So it depends. It depends what it is. Let's say this rabbinical court missed, an explicit piece of Talmud. They missed the Mishnah. They missed one of the later commentaries that says it's permitted or forbidden or whatever. They missed something obvious. That can be turned over. If they miss something, let's say it's a difference of opinion, and they went on one side and not the other side or whatever, that's not necessarily turned over. It has to be something obvious. It has to be something blatant. If it's something where you could prove there was, there was a bribe, or there was something else going on, that it wasn't judged properly, okay, then you can bring that up. But usually, usually in general, all things being equal, once the judgment's done, it's done. I'm not saying it can't be overthrown. There was a case. I'll tell you a crazy case. There was somebody who stole $250,000 from somebody, and they went in front of three people. Right? It wasn't necessarily like a proper rabbinical court, but they chose judges, right? And they agreed to go in front of this rabbinical court. And what happened? The person who owed the money lost, right? He had to pay. So what did he do? He went to secular court in Israel, with going behind the back of this rabbinic court, and he got it overturned because they said they didn't look at all the facts. They didn't look at this. Well, the guy lied, right? The guy lied. So now the rabbinical courts used to have power. They can put people in jail. They can do all kinds of. They don't have power today.
Well,
even
capital punishment was the reason I was asking, right? Because
Yeah.
I remember as a boy seeing the gallows where I'm from, and then
we don't have capital punishment today. There's no Sanhedrin.
Oh,
right?
In the United States, there's still several states that have capital punishment.
100%. In the eyes of the Torah, the Mishnah says
you wouldn't want a miscarriage.
That right. If there was, a rabbinic court that would convict somebody once in 70 years or once in 70 years, it was considered a bloody court. They would bend over backwards not to give out corporal punishment, right? In different ways. But what happened? So the guy that was owed the money to, came in front of the rabbinical court and was crying in front of the rabbinical court. He said, "This guy owes me money." This rabbinical court agreed, right? These three rabbis agreed, and he went to secular court, had it overturned. Now the rabbinical court doesn't have power, even though the secular court backs them up in different ways. This case, they overturned it. Since they overturned it, the rabbinical court had its hands tied. In other words, once the secular court says, this is it, so this could happen. I mean, I'm not going to say how often it happens. Again, I have no idea. Hopefully people are on the up and up. But technically, someone doesn't like what the rabbinical court said, and then they go to a secular court, and they open up a file, and they get it overturned. Obviously, it's forbidden. Going to a secular court in that case, also forbidden. Right? Whether they win or lose, it's still forbidden.
Yeah.
But there are people there that are unscrupulous, and they just don't care. So when I was sitting by the rabbinical court, my Rebbe, I mentioned this before, that you have people coming in. These are all ultra-Orthodox Jews. Big hats, long coats, liars, all kinds of fraud, this, that. And my Rebbe would say, it's a good thing you have a connection to me, because if you didn't have a connection to me, you lose your mind. You'd say, this is what Torah is. That's what I changed my life for. But okay, people are people. Don't mix up Jews and Judaism. Things, definitely things can happen. Now, if it's something that's obvious, right? If it's something that obvious that someone points out that the rabbinical court missed, okay, then they can then they can go back, and retry it, right? But in general, unless it's something like that egregious, it's going to stand. And once it stands, once it's signed, as long as there was nothing egregious over here missing that they missed or whatever, that's it. A guy pays. Now, what happens if he doesn't abide by it? The rabbinical doesn't have power. They can put up signs against them, et cetera. They're not going according to what the rabbi said, and you see signs all the time. This one didn't listen and that one didn't listen. They'll have their own excuses. Why not? And people are just corrupt. They said, oh, they didn't hear my side of the case right. They only heard they're this, they're that. These people, the rabbis that I saw, the great rabbis of the last generation. I mean, these people are tzaddikim. They don't have any personal vendettas, right? They're fully righteous and pious. They make me look like an ant. Not even. These people are so pious. No, I didn't listen to my case. They missed the total point. You don't know anything. Compared to these people, you don't know anything. Now, certain things can be misconstrued because they might not know 100%, the facts on the ground. Okay, that possibly can happen, right? But it's not going to happen that often because they're going to investigate and they're going to bring in people, right, to say, is this really the case? There was a case once, they made me pay attention because it had to do with a car, and that there was somebody who rented a car and he burnt out the clutch, right? So now, I only learned that on a standard, a few times in my life, but I grinded the gears a bunch of times. I was a kid, right? When I learned, but eventually you get the hang of it, right? So they asked me my opinion. So the owner of the car who rented the car said he burnt out the clutch. He didn't know what he was doing. The other guy says the bad clutch burnt out itself. I didn't burn it out. Burnt out itself. So they asked me. They sent them outside, and then they look at me. So they said, "Okay, what do you say over here?" I said, "Depends." I said, "If this guy's the biggest moron in the world," I said, "he could blow out the clutch if it's a new clutch." I said, "But someone who's learning, even if they grind the gears, they're not going to burn out the clutch." Unless they have no idea what they're doing and they grind it for hours. If they grind it for hours, I get it. They can burn out the clutch.
I spent 25 years in the auto industry, and I remember back in the day, when I was still young in the business, I had one lady burn out a clutch inside of 400 kilometers, like 360 kilometers, and the clutch was gone. And we couldn't get to the bottom of it until we took her, the service manager took her out for a drive in a different car and watched her just smoking the clutch plate. And that's a whole different story. Yeah.
Right. No, but so they had a whole list of the things for, they got the car checked, they got it inspected, they took it to a proper place, they checked off this, they checked off that. So I said, it depends. I said, if this guy absolutely doesn't know what he's doing, he didn't go 400 kilometers. Right? I don't think he even went that far. I said, unless he was the biggest idiot in the world, he could burn out the clutch. But he's got to but essentially he's got to bring the proof that he did it. I said, in practical terms, I said, as far as I know, you got to be really bad. And you have to prove that he's really bad. Right? Then you'd have to prove that he doesn't know how to drive.
Rabbi, I remember one fellow, trying to speed shift. He was going so fast, he ripped the shifter right out of the center. There's your proof.
Yeah, no, okay. It's like that great Three Stooges line. It's like, go fast. He says, why not? He says, I can't. He goes, why not? He says, can't find the clutch. He's stuck. Right? So, so something like that, okay. So then they have to ask somebody. They have to ask someone who's, non-biased. They say, okay, what's the deal? Can this happen? Can that happen? And then they have to judge it. Right? In other words, let's say, a case like the Talmud brings, if you took you took a donkey. You took an ox on a regular walk or whatever. Right? It dies. It dies while it's working. Now you happen to rent it. Right? Who's responsible? If you worked it the normal way, you're not responsible. If you took it up a cliff and it got, and it couldn't take the high altitude, it was in the Rockies, and it was like, it can't breathe, mile high, then you're negligent. But if you took it in a normal place and the thing keels over, you didn't overweight it or anything else, then you're liable. Right? But you have to know what happened. Yeah, you have to know what's, So the rabbis have to get, they have to get through the facts, right? In order to be able to make a judgment. Now, certain things don't come out. One side won't say anything, and the other side say, "Hey, what about this?
Yeah.
What about that? You didn't see him mention that." So that's why it goes back and forth, right? It goes back and forth, and they'll bring in as many witnesses, as the rabbinical court needs in order that they get the right information. Because they certainly don't want to be misled, right? But they're going to ask a million questions. It happened like this. It happened like that. It's something else, right? Whatever. Yeah, but there are people that are scoundrels, right? Absolute scoundrels. One guy comes in and he didn't want to pay the realtor money for rent for for his son-in-law. So this other realtor says, how did you see the apartment? He goes, you showed it to me. So why does he have to pay a finder's fee? So what the guy says is, I'm also a realtor. He says, doesn't matter. You found this place through me. You got to pay. So I was like, oh, it's open and shut case. But this guy, this went on for months. Back and forth. And this finally got him into base, and that was it. It was like in 2 sessions, it was over. So at the end, this guy asked the rabbinical court, says, who has to pay the finder's fee? Me and my son-in-law. So my rabbi gets up and goes, you guys fight that out amongst yourselves. And he threw him out. But it's crazy. What the guy think? I know what the guy thought. He didn't want to pay. That's what he thought. This guy found him the place, worked hard, this, that. Why shouldn't he be paid for his time? I mean, I remember I was involved in real estate, and I had to sign all these, non waivers, conditional waivers. Why? So people would go around me. It's like, oh, you didn't do anything. I was like, would you have found the property otherwise? Joe, would you have found it? No. So why should I pay you? I have to go find it yourself. You go find the property yourself. Why should I get a finder's fee? Doesn't matter if I made one phone call. You shouldn't get paid? No, you don't want to pay. It's what? You don't trust me? No. Sign. Right? And I remember when I learned under this real estate guru, he said if they will not sign, move on. They have to sign a non-disclosure. If they don't sign it, that means even if you're going to get paid $3,000, and I got messed up even on a $3,000 deal or a $5,000 deal, right? But if they don't want to sign, that means you can't trust them. Doesn't matter what they say, get them to sign. If they don't sign, you move on. Because that means you're not going to get paid, right? That's what it means. So over here, another explanation, right, is you're looking at both litigants as evil. Again, you're not going to give them a preference. But what if them's really righteous? What if someone comes in, big hat, long coat, you know him to be very distinguished person, right, in Torah knowledge. You got to look at him like he's a scoundrel. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter what he looks like. It matters what's going to come out of his mouth. Now, is there going to be a bias there? Of course there's going to be a bias. The person going to be a great rabbinic scholar, come from a great rabbinic family. Genealogy, baby. He's got the genes. So what? So what? He could be a scoundrel. You don't think there are people like that? I'm sure. Right? I'm sure. It doesn't matter where the genealogy goes to. Right? They go all the way back to Rashi, the Rambam. Straight. Who cares? You're a liar. You're a thief. Pay up. So you got to look at both, even if the person looks righteous. Even if he is righteous. And he's coming to the rabbinical court, he has to be able to answer what he needs to answer. And if he's wrong, he's going to pay. Or whatever he has to do. But it doesn't matter where he comes from. Right? It's another thing. People say, well, he's got a pedigree. So, right? My Rebbe's mother would say, you know what a pedigree means? Just add an extra zero at the end. It only makes you more liable. If you come from a rabbinic family, and through his mother, 8 generations goes back to the Vilna Gaon straight. Wow, look at my pedigree. But if you're a scoundrel, what do I care about your pedigree? What do I care about your pedigree? Irrelevant. People look at me like, oh, you go further back, who knows what's in my pedigree, right? I'm sure we got rabbinic scholars in my pedigree, but you say, oh, look at him, he's nothing, he's this, that. So fine, you could say that on the other side, but if someone's got a pedigree, someone's got a serious lineage, serious rabbinic lineage, or whatever the case is, doesn't matter. He's still a big Ephes. In my language, he's a doofus. Right? Show me what you're saying is the truth or not. Right? What do I care about your lineage? Right? Doesn't matter. Now, let's say this person is really righteous. So now, the obvious question is, how can you look at him as evil? How can you look at him as evil? It's really righteous, right? But it could be. Now, so this is going to be a whole thing. That God orchestrates in such a way that a righteous person can be obligated money to the other person, right? Could be he's liable, and the one claiming it couldn't get it out of him, right? So what happens? God makes it that this righteous person can't answer for himself. He gives a wrong answer, a wrong claim, or whatever, puts words in his mouth in order that he should pay back the money. But what's really going on over here? So according to the Zohar, now this is a much, much bigger talk. I don't know how far we're going to get with this. Zohar tells us someone owes someone money. Let's say you owe somebody money, he doesn't return it. He borrowed money, but he's got no document to prove it. Right? Let's say it was done verbally. And the person who owed the money, let's say Reuven owed Shimon $1,000, right? It was a verbal agreement, right? Normally when you borrow money, you have to write out a document, right? Normally you have witnesses there in case the person can't pay it back. I remember my Rebbe's son once said, if you ever borrow money from someone, spell it out. If you borrowed $1,000, write 1,000 US dollars. Why? He said someone came in rabbinical court once, and guy had an extra zero on the thing. He said, no, he owes me more than that. He owes me 10 times more than that. But he added an extra zero and didn't spell it out. You imagine? You imagine borrowing someone from his friend. Now he's not his friend anymore. Borrowed $1,000, right? But he didn't write 1,000 US dollars. He just put 1,000. So what did the guy do? He put in a few commas and he put 10,000. He said it happened. It's crazy, right? You see these things and you look at people like, come on. So what happens? The guy dies. Reuben owed Shimon money, verbally. No documents. He dies. What do the children know about the debt? Zero. Right? The Talmud tells us children know nothing about their parents' financial obligations. Usually. They don't know anything. They don't know about the debt. Zero. Right? So what's God going to do? God in his own way is going to orchestrate it. He's going to bring it out later in another generation, or another 2 generations, or another 5 generations. How is he going to do it? Transmigration of soul, which is an absolute Jewish concept, meaning reincarnation. So the one claiming the money, what is it going to do? The one claiming the money in our case was the transmigrated soul, the one who was owed the money before. Right? The righteous person, who's the righteous person in this story? He's the one of the soul that borrowed the money. He didn't necessarily do anything wrong per se. I mean, now he owes the money. But why did he get messed up in the rabbinical court? He couldn't give a proper answer, or whatever the case is, because God says he owes the money from a previous soul. So there are times in this world people will go through different things, and their soul came back in order to pay back. There are all kinds of stories. There's a story, of somebody gets held up, right? And he gets money stolen from him, right? And the guy's abandoned. The guy runs off, right? Whatever. And then someone later on, comes and he owes money to someone, like this whole thing. And what happened? It was the soul coming back, getting the money that this guy really owed him because he stole from him. Like, it was a whole story, right? It was the whole thing. But it happens through transmigrated soul, that this person's now going to come back. He's the one who really owed the money, but he had to come back in this world in order to give it back. So when we say that's so you see that someone can owe money or someone can pay, you can say, what's going on? Right? What in the world's going on? Why should I have to pay this money? Why did I lose this money? Right? So it could be that in the previous life, you really owed money to somebody, or you didn't pay a debt, or whatever the case is. So you end up coming back, your soul came back, and now it has to go through this whole thing in order to pay this descendant or this person, and came back. So everything is orchestrated measure for measure, right? Whether we fathom it or not. We're not going to be given the information in this world, right? We're not going to see it. But if someone had to fork over money, let's say there's a lawsuit, I don't know, some lawsuit, and a person had to pay all kinds of money. It really wasn't his fault, right? Let's say it really wasn't his fault, but whatever, guilty is charged, he had to pay. And you wonder, what in the world I do to have to deserve this? So you could tell me, person sinned, person did other things, maybe he's obligated, whatever. Could be his soul came back, and now he's in this body, and he had to go through this whole thing and lose this money because he actually owed the money, right? So the reality is, what we see, we don't fathom. We don't fathom. You get a lot of people, just as an example, right? You got a lot of people invested with Madoff, and they lost a ton of money. Now, it could be that, I'm not saying every single case, right? There could have been a lot of people who lost money because that money they had wasn't supposed to be theirs, right? And since it was given, since they had it and they got it however they got it through illicit means or who knows what, that means they have to now cough it up later. And even though everyone invested with Madoff, and they didn't know his Ponzi scheme and all these other things, and then a lot of people got had and they got taken for a ride. Could be a lot of these people, that's what happened. In other words, through a previous reincarnated soul, they went through that and they had to give over this money, and then the money got lost, right? Because it was owed. Now, again, is that going to be across the board? I'm not saying it's across the board, right? But when we, it's very hard to figure out why we take losses in different ways, right? I was just mentioning in my Q&A that somebody could lose today because, let's say a mitzvah has the ability to protect a person, right? So now what happened? Let's say God decreed the person should die. So instead, person's in a taxi gets in an accident, and what do you get? You get a little bump on the head, right? You go to the hospital, no concussion, everything's good. Okay, now, it could be something worse was supposed to happen. So why didn't it happen? Because the person has mitzvahs, right? If a person has mitzvahs, it guards the person. Now, there's only one thing. If a person gets saved, let's say in a miraculous way, or even not in a miraculous way, it could be, let's say a person had 1.5 million mitzvahs, so he was really supposed to die, so God takes 300,000 away. Right? In other words, the mitzvah protects him. When he does a sin, he loses that protection, but the mitzvah's there. So let's say he gets upstairs after 120 years, and he has, 3 million mitzvahs. But the reality is he really should have had 8 million or 9 million or 10 million or whatever. But he lost along the way, right, for certain things that they did, that instead of God making this evil decree, he just, he put him in different situations where he took some mitzvahs of his away. Right? In other words, the mitzvah's there to protect. But a person can be taken away some mitzvahs in order to save his life. Right? Or Yaakov Avinu, I use the example that Yaakov asked God to protect him when he went to go see Esav. Right? Good old brother Esav. God, so Yaakov says, I want you to give me bread, give me food, you'll take care of me. What does God say? He says 100%. He says no problem. So what does Yaakov say? Ask him again. What could God say? What do you think, I'm hard of hearing? I understood the first time. I told you, I'll take care of you. All right, so the commentaries explain what's Yaakov worried about. He's worried about he's going to do something to sin, then he doesn't have the divine protection. Right? Because normally we're like Teflon, right? So we have a protective barrier. That protective barrier called mitzvahs, right? And they're offshoots of the mitzvahs that we do. Problem is when a person opens themselves to sin and they actually sin, right? So it's kind of like in Star Wars where the what do you call it? Where Darth Vader is in that dark planet or whatever. They got this protective shield, right? They got a protective shield, but what happens? You do things wrong. Oh, hey, what does this button do? Oh, the shield is down. Let's go in. Let's destroy him, right? But when the shield is down, that means we're susceptible to all kinds of things. Because that shield that we have is Torah. If we do transgressions, that shield gets knocked down. There's like a chink made in the armor, right? There's a hole. There's a little bit of a hole. You don't have that same type of protection. But even if you have that protection, it's kind of like using extra lives in a video game. I don't even know why I'm even saying this, but it's like having these extra lives that you're using for protection later. And somehow those lives can get used up, but you're still alive, but you're still there. Yeah, you have them on the side, but you don't necessarily want to use them unless you have to. Right? And in this world, if there's, God forbid, a divine decree, and a person's supposed to die, wouldn't you give up some of the merits, of these mitzvahs in the next world to live? I think most people would want to live. They wouldn't want to die. Some people would say, let me die, I'll take the mitzvahs in the next world. Could be, but the protection's not there. Yeah.
Well, Rabbi, I think over the last couple thousand of years of dispersion for the Jewish people and now returning to the land of Israel, how much have they endured over that period to the point of being wiped out so many potential times, spread abroad and unwelcomed in so many different areas, yet what kept them going, what protected them. And I think you're really touching on that here.
So you see from Tanakh is like a sine curve, right? When the Jewish people did the right thing, they went up. They did the wrong thing, they can get annihilated. right? That the divine protection is Torah, right? That is the divine protection. When you go away from that, right, and you do what you do whatever you want or whatever, you don't have the same divine protection. The famous Chazon Ish, or Avram Yishaya Karlitz, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, may his name be blessed, said that the state of Israel has the merit to exist because they help Torah. Whether they should take Torah from the state, they shouldn't take Torah from the state, they've had the ability to uphold Torah, right? Hundreds of institutions, they've helped this, that. They said, if they stop giving, right, that's their merit to be in existence. So Chazon Ish said, once they stop, once they want to take money away, that's it. This state has no function. This country will absolutely have zero reason to exist. Right? It's a scary thing. So Talmud also tells us, let's say, person needs to swear, right? In a rabbinical court, we mentioned that. So the court says, send me away from these evil people. Why? Because they don't want anyone to swear. Because the one who swears, and the one who makes him swear, this is a huge novelty here, are both considered evil. Now, what's the problem? Problem is, this guy has one witness, right, which we mentioned. He's got one witness. He's got to make the other guy swear. Okay, he only has one witness. What, we're going to throw the book at him? Because he only has one witness, he causes the other person to swear. If he causes the other person to swear, what are we worried about? We're worried about he's going to swear falsely. Putting a stumbling block in front of the other person, even though it's permissible. Right? So the question is, the one who made him swear, why is he considered evil? Because he's putting a stumbling block, he may lie. Now the person may not lie. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Didn't we see that? Right? We saw that before. Give the benefit of the doubt. We're not giving the benefit of the doubt over here. A person could have ulterior reasons why they want to lie. Right? They don't have any fear of heaven. But the reality is, he's putting a stumbling block, even though it's permissible for him to do so. Right? Now, if a person, let's say the other person owed him money, and he's only got one witness, doesn't mean the other guy doesn't owe him the money. He owes him the money. This is the only way you can get the money out of him, by getting the guy to swear. Right? So the rabbis tell us that the evidence and the merit is given to the one that has the merit to do so. Right? The obligation on the other person. So in other words, you're causing someone to swear. How does it work? In other words, you got the other person who's owed the money. Reuven owes Shimon money. Shimon has one witness. But now he can't get it out of him. He can't get it out of him because it's going to make him swear. And he's considered evil. Why is he considered evil? Right? So, he's considered evil. It's a mind-boggling thing. He's considered evil because he must have done something previously wrong. Right? He's not so righteous. Why? He must have done something wrong before to make someone swear. That's why it's considered evil. Right? Let's take it one step further. Says the Vilna Gaon. Rav Elijah Vilna explains, someone who transgresses the Torah by accident, according to the Rambam, needs to do tshuva. Needs to repent of the laws of repentance. Did it by accident. You could say he should have been more careful. Whatever. If he's truly righteous, why does he have to repent? Right? Why does he have to do tshuva? He did it by accident. Right? So you can tell me, okay, he was negligent. If he's negligent, he didn't do it by accident. He was negligent. Right? If he's truly righteous, he wouldn't have done something by accident. Says the Vilna Gaon, it must be, person must have done something on purpose. He must have transgressed on purpose to open themselves up to sin. Because why should a person do something by accident if he didn't sin purposely? Meaning, he opened himself up to sin. What's his proof? So he brings the proof from the prophet Hosea. Prophet Hosea, chapter 14, verse 2, says the Jewish people should do tshuva to God. Why? because you have stumbled in your iniquity. What does it mean you stumbled? You made a mistake. You did it by accident. But the only reason you did it by accident is because you did something on purpose. You opened yourself up. And once you open yourself up, accident goes out the window. So we learn from the Gra that a person has to be so careful that he shouldn't want to cause anyone to lie. It's a stumbling block. It's what the Sefer Hasidim says, that if someone sees other people talking and they want to know what they're speaking about, right? If he's worried, they don't want to reveal it, don't ask. Because then what are they going to say? They might lie. You don't want to put someone in that position. Right? So now, let's say you're away from them. Right? So what's going to be? Maybe they'll start talking. Maybe they won't stop talking. Right? But over here, what does the end of the Mishnah say? Maybe we even get into the end of the Mishnah here. It says that when they're dismissed from you, look at them as they're both innocent. Right? So what does that mean over here? He says that one explanation is don't suspect the one who's obligated is a thief. Why not? He lied. He owes the money. He's a thief. Right? What's he gonna? He's gonna classify him as a thief, capital T. Why shouldn't you look at him as a thief? He made a mistake. Really didn't intend to steal. Maybe he was obligated to swear, and he swore, but maybe he swore falsely. Maybe it's evil inclination. There are all kinds of things a person can be, guilty for. Right? But even if the one is guilty, a person should never assume that's who the person is. Right? We can't assume unless we have other evidence. We can't assume that's their nature. Right? What do we have to assume? We have to assume the person's done tshuva and not going to do it again. Right? If you know the person to be a scoundrel, fine. Right? But if not, a person made a mistake, was going through a difficult time, whatever it was, we can try and judge the person meritoriously. Right? Maybe he forgot he owed the money. Maybe it's under onus, some type of onus. Or maybe to contradict the other person. I don't know, he felt bad, he did other things, whatever it is. Right? We can make all kinds of assumptions not to judge them in such a negative way. Now obviously, a person does something wrong. Right? No one's a choir boy over here, but a person cannot be labeled. Right? It's forbidden to label somebody as X, Y, or Z. Right? Certainly if you label somebody, certainly as a kid, you're not going to label a kid, oh, you're this, you're that, you're the other thing, because they'll act on it. They'll 100% act on it. Right? But a person who does something like this, if he's not fully guilty, even if he lied, even if he did other things, right? We can make the assumption that this is a one-shot deal. That really the person didn't really want to do it. The person was on their onus. Whatever. There could be a million reasons why the person is again, if the person gets messed up because of it, it's hard to look at a person, in that way. But, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, you're not going to, a person's not going to throw the book at them, and label them in such a way. But, at the end of the day, also a scary thing. A person dies. If they're a righteous person, they're looked at as a righteous person. God is not going to judge them like a righteous person. God is going to judge them where they're holding what they did. He's going to look at them as being evil, the true judge. No one's going to escape judgment. God cannot be bribed. So what's going to help us? What's going to help us the day of judgment? Torah mitzvahs. That's what protects the person. That's it. When you're in front of the true judge, there is nothing else. So therefore, a person can have all the accolades in this world. True righteous person. Question is, how is he looked at in God's eyes? Right? Normally we say, if a person's beloved by people, that means God's very happy with them also. Now, that could also That could also be not true, right? It could also be a false pretense. But in general, right? In general, if people like somebody, it means God's happy with them as well. But so when a person gets upstairs, that all goes out the window, right? God rolls up his sleeves, so to speak, and says, okay, let's see. Let's open up the file. Where's his thoughts? Where's his mitzvahs? What did he learn? How did he learn? How did he deal with his kids? There are a million things. Was he honest in business? Did he speak Lashon Hara? It depends what the source of his soul is, how he did things, whatever. God's going to take it soup to nuts. So just because he's righteous in this world, no guarantee. They should have a good judgment. But God is going to look at them like he looks at everybody else and see if what they did was truly meritorious. And that you're standing in front of the King of Kings as a pure soul. You see your life flash before your eyes. You can't lie about anything because it's all there being recorded. Just like we're recording now, as long as your system holds up, right? But that being the case, there's no room to hide. Whatever you've done, everyone who has an out-of-body experience says the exact same thing. First thing is they see their life flash before their eyes. They see everything they did, right? Just when you thought it was okay to read National Geographic in the bathroom, bam, right there. Say, hey, how'd you know that? We got two angels following us, as Zohar says, recording every last thing that we do. So when you get upstairs, you can't say, I didn't do this. You can't say, I didn't do that. Now, what's God going to say? Justify it. Tell me, what's going on over here. If a person has a good excuse why they did it, whatever it is, and God says, okay, knocks it off. If not, can't hide. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing. We say many, many times in the Rosh Hashanah liturgy, right? We say God does not forget. Now, even though we believe that and we have proper faith, before Sony came on the scene, we never would have believed it. Recording what we're speaking, video, all these things, a person would have had faith and say, okay, that's what we say, that's what we believe. But now we can see there's something that exists in video and recording and all that. The person can't say, oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, I didn't do that. You got to say, let's go back to the videotape. That's it. Let's go see. Right? Let's DVR it. Bam, 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 bam. Right? You're watching it on 4 screens. I can't even imagine. Your life on 5 screens. And that's it. That's part of what hell is the pain the soul goes through when it has to acknowledge what it did. Now, if you don't have a good excuse what you did, you are, can't imagine, right? Hopefully God should have mercy when it comes to judgment. God's going to say, you spit in my face, you knew this, you knew that, you did this, you did that, and what are we going to answer?
Wow. Real amazing stuff, Rabbi. I know, like you spoke about sports heroes, how many of them, people admire them and think this and that about them, when in reality, there's all this stuff going on behind the scenes that they shouldn't be doing. Yeah, it's all nothing hidden that won't be revealed, I'm sure.
No, this is an upside down world. The people who are, up in this world are down in the next world, right? And we mentioned last week about evil people. They have their day, right? But God's going to get them. We mentioned, especially by football players, someone's going to, sign this next big contract in the off season. He gets caught with domestic abuse all over the place, and that's it, finished, right? Actually, and that's it. Never play another game, And the irony is, I think I mentioned earlier also in my Q&A, that the irony is, this guy's been playing, football since Pop Warner, since when he was a kid, right? And he went to high school, he went to college. Made it in the pros, was actually good. Now he's gonna get the payday, and he did something stupid. 614th commandment: don't be stupid. He did something stupid, gets on film, it got taped, and this guy is out. This guy's done.
Whole
right?
career shot down the tube.
Oh, the whole
lifetime worth of work.
Shot. No endorsements, no Nike, no Kodak, nothing. I don't know if he's out in Kodak, whatever, right? But he's not going to have any of these endorsements, and this guy could have made $30 million, right? So the irony is God built them up and built them up and built them up, and then he just cut them down. just cut them down, and there's nothing for them to say because it's all on film, right? They got it on film. What's he going to answer? What in the world are you going to answer? It's right there, black and white. There's nothing to answer. And you just messed up.
That embarrassment. Sorry,
right, you have nothing to answer, and you just messed up your payday, and that's it.
But I mean, when you think about, like you say, judgment after the fact, after our 120 years or whatever the case is, there's going to be no hiding from it, and the shame that could be there for the sins.
Well, that shame, I can't even imagine. If someone ever got caught, and probably most of us have, got caught doing something we shouldn't have done, right? And you have to admit and you have to apologize. That is painful. Now, you could justify it, you could this, you could that, but if you're wrong, deep in the heart, and you have to admit it, and you eat crow, and you have to eat crow, there's nothing more embarrassing than that. Now, imagine if you do that to the King of Kings, and you messed up your life, and you didn't care, whatever, and you get up there. There's not going to be any more embarrassment than that, right? You're going to say, well, you didn't show me, you didn't this, right? I know a hide's going to be fried because everything's universal, what they have to keep according to the Torah. Oh, I didn't know you couldn't steal. God's going to say, what? Didn't you go to school? Did you read the Constitution? No. But you're not allowed to steal, right? But I only cheated on my taxes. It was a legal loophole. But it wasn't. You hid money. You did this. These things are universal. So in Noahide, the punishment is much more severe, right? Because they can't, they can't say, I didn't know this. It's not something God's going to say, oh, you were playing with creation. You took a donkey and a horse and made a mule. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that, right? You have to play with creation. That makes sense. Then you know what the problem with the mule is? Sterile. Can't reproduce. Why do you think it can't reproduce? Gee, I don't know. It's genetics. Why is it genetics? Why is it genetics? Because you're not allowed to play with creation, right? Now, certain things may be more obvious, certain things may be less obvious, right? But the things that are more obvious, the punishment's going to be 10 times severe. Because you can't say, I didn't know that. Forget about a moral imperative. Murder, not in self-defense. You didn't know it was forbidden? Cain and Abel. God says, what'd you do? Cain understood he did something wrong. It was his fault he brought dandelions on the altar. Here, God, I want to show you how impressed I am. Here's some dandelions. Thank you very much. Gave me dandelions. You got upset with Abel, what the whole discussion was about, right? And he kills him. He doesn't know that's forbidden? Of course he knows. It's inherent in his soul. There are things that people understand from within. I don't need to tell you it's forbidden. It's obvious. Right? Money laundering. Isn't that obvious? That you're not allowed to do it? It's obvious. It's stealing. Wow. Why'd you do it? Okay. There are many reasons possibly why. It doesn't matter. Right? But again, something that's more obvious, it's not part of any detail. It's not any people say rabbinic mumbo jumbo, this, that. It's obvious. What's the answer going to be? That's the pain. That's the pain the soul's going to feel because now you know everything is true. Now you're outside the body. You're outside of physicality. Now you realize where you are and what's going on. It's game over. The pain, that's what part of hell is because you got nothing to answer. And you're at God's mercy. Because he can say, okay, you're going to go through this, you're going to go through that, you're going to go through that, all these things, and hopefully there'll be something left of you at the end. And you're going to say thank you, right? If you're not screaming, who knows, from whatever torture it is, right? But at the end of the day, you can't even imagine. That embarrassment, okay, that helps. That helps take away certain things, right? But at the end of the day, it doesn't whitewash everything. Right? You're still going to have to answer, but that embarrassment, it's like every single time you have your hand in the cooking jar. Once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. And you're like, stop the movie. Stop! Stop! It just keeps going and showing. So we have to pray that we do the right thing. We can constantly do the right thing. We do tshuva. We properly repent. God should have mercy on all of us, 100%.
Excellent, Rabbi. Well, I guess we've been over 90 minutes. If we're going to wind it down for today, but I know that going forward with my schedule change, and you and I are going to have to discuss what might work, and we're just so honored that you're taking the time, because I think today's class really had a lot of punch in it, especially to teach us what goes on in the minds of a rabbinical court, what goes on with judges, and why they're supposed to act a certain way, but heaven forbid we ever look at them as corrupt, or heaven forbid they ever take a bribe. But in reality, we need to respond accordingly, and just look at they are who they are, where they're at. I think you really balanced out a lot, especially for B'nai Noach, to help us understand the difference between a rabbinical court and a secular court. You touched on some real dynamite stuff today that I think this episode is going to end up in a separate archive for me, because it'd be a reference purpose for me. I think you got some great stuff in there, and I so enjoy you taking the time to share, because I know you spent years in a rabbinical court yourself. And you're still a fairly young man. I mean, I don't. Who knows? You could find yourself in a rabbinical court as time progresses. I don't know. I don't know what Hashem has for you, but
No,
I know.
that's true. No one knows. No one knows what their potential is. But I can say, just like Rabbi Akiva, certainly have my humble beginnings. Rabbi Akiva started learning at 40. Imagine, didn't know Aleph Beis. Didn't know Aleph Beis. He went with his 5-year-old son to Cheder to learn. Probably couldn't fit in the seats. Had to find him a special seat. And he's reading the Aleph Beis, and look who Rabbi Akiva became. Right? So people say, oh, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. I'm living proof. I started from the beginning. Right? The only difference was I was born Jewish, knew how to read Hebrew, but that didn't really mean anything, because didn't know what any of it meant. So it's a grind, right? You take the time. Everything is building blocks. And a person can't get frustrated. You have to take it step by step. You can't jump hurdles. And there are no cliff notes, because I've been looking for them for a long time. No cliff notes. I remember once learning
No
the
shortcut.
Yeah. There was a guy walking around the yeshiva with a Talmud on his head. So what are you doing? He goes, osmosis. So I go, no, I think you should go sit down and learn. I don't think it's going to help.
Well, isn't that the case? I mean, so often, especially us here in the West who have come out of other religions, we have a tendency to think that we're going to get some automatic relief on the other side in the world to come. And I really think listening to the ethics of the fathers really helps us understand even our own perspective. That, wait a second, Hashem is fair and just. He is merciful, but he is just, and that justice, is his word just doesn't return to him void. He knows what he's doing, and if you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, don't expect it not to come back and bite you somewhere along the way. Realistically, it's just the purging is good for you, to purge that sin. So I think in the end, the way you sum this down to teshuva,
But the only problem is nobody wants the purge. The purge is what saves us.
Well,
right?
Heaven forbid
we should be Wisdom and Dixie that we're not looking to be masochists, right? But at the same time, person has to say over the mantra, this is to my benefit later. Even if it's hard, no matter what it is. Whether it's livelihood, whether it's sickness, whether all kinds of things that we have to deal with, the difficulty is actually helping us in the long run. Problem is, we're in a physical body. We don't want it. We just want everything to be good. And, as God said to Abraham, well, if everyone wanted everything good and easy, well, everyone would line up on the block. Everyone would want to join. But that's obviously not the case.
Well, of the sweat of our brow, right? So we eat our bread all the days of our lives. And so all I can say is I'm thankful that you're taking the time to share with us these wonderful lessons. And I really got a lot out of today's lessons. So are we going to wind this down? Are we good? Any final words?
We're good.
All right, folks. So we're going to be changing days, trying to work something out that actually works for Rabbi Coffman. I'm just grateful that he's still willing to go forward with this. So Until next time, folks, have a wonderful, wonderful week.